Well, history will be made today as the astronauts aboard the Orion capsule will fly farther than any human has ever before. The Artemis II mission is set to loop around the moon this afternoon, the crew sharing these new photos of the moon just this weekend. That part of the moon has previously been too dark for other missions to see, so the Artemis II crew will be tasked with taking thousands of pictures as they wrap around the moon today. CBS News space consultant Bill Harwood joins us now with more on this. So, Bill, certainly a big day. Break down what we're expecting to see happen today. How is this going to work?
You know, they're only about 20,000 miles from the moon right now. When you think about, how far they've actually traveled to get here, they are out there. They have an enormously complex science observation plan. The research community wants to take every advantage of this because these will be the first human eyes to look on the far side of the moon in any kind of detail, even including the Apollo astronauts a half-century ago. So they're going to be taking thousands of photographs, running video cameras, audio notes. They're going to be recording what their thoughts are, if they can see any slight changes in color, that sort of thing. So it's going to be a busy day for them and a pretty exciting one for us. You know, it's not every day you see people fly around the moon.
Bill, we've been talking about the fact that the crew will lose communication with Earth for about 40 minutes today when the moon blocks radio signals. I want to play a bit of sound from our Mark Strassman when he asked the crew about this.
You're going to have radio silence for about 40 minutes. You'll be on one side of the moon. Everyone else on Earth will be on the other. You'll be focused on the mission. What do you hope the rest of us are thinking about?
When people talk about that Apollo 11 first moon landing, there's the two that landed on the moon, and then there's the one Michael Collins stayed in orbit, and he did orbits around the far side of the moon alone with those losses of signal. And people asked him the rest of his life what that was like. And in the end, for me, it leads back to gratitude. Gratitude that out of this huge universe, we get to live together on Earth, planet Earth.
So it sounds like this scary moment. They seem ready. How do astronauts prepare for this?
By years and years of training. You know, they named this crew really 3 years ago, if you think about it, and they have been training for this mission ever since. You know, the part about going behind the moon and being out of contact, that always strikes all of us as, you know, interesting, and there seems to be some ominous hint of danger about that, but really it's not. You know, Isaac Newton is guiding this spacecraft. It's simple physics. They're going to come out from behind the moon pretty much no matter what happens. And they're going to have it'll be kind of fun for them, I think, because they're not going to have mission control in their ear every 10 seconds, you know, which, you know, talking and all of that. They won't be distracted by that. They'll be able to focus on the moon and the observations that they've planned. So I personally think the crew is looking forward to that loss of signal period, but we'll have to wait and see what they say about it.
You know, Bill, I think there's so much curiosity, too, about how the astronauts maintain, you know, just normal life up there, what they're eating, all of that. And then we heard that the crew actually had to fix some toilet issues over the weekend. Can you catch us up? What happened there?
Well, you know, the engineers aren't positive about what happened there. The crew is able to use the toilet. You know, the problem here is that the temperatures in space are extreme. And so there's a tank that holds urine, and they think that the line where they would dump that overboard froze up at one point, so they couldn't dump it. And so in that case, they have these contingency things. I won't go into detail, but, you know, they're not that big of a deal. It's easy to use, and I don't think the crew is all that put out by this at all. You know, you plan for things like that. It's happened before. It happened on the space shuttle a couple of times. So, you know, that's just part of flying in space. Things happen. But things are starting to re-happen with the toilet because it's been fixed.
Just like camping.
That's right.
I don't know how to describe that.
Bill Harwood, thank you.
All right, let's bring in Joe Rayo. He's an associate astronomer at New York's Hayden Planetarium. So, Joe, just put this into context for us. Human beings, far side of the moon, how big of a deal is this?
You know, first of all, I want to wish both of you a happy Monday or a happy moon day, because the word Monday is derived from the moon. This is indeed a big moon day for everybody who has been watching the space probe, the Artemis II. And you're absolutely right. They are going to be going behind the moon, and they're going to be setting a couple of records today. Well, actually one record at 1:56 this afternoon. they will be reaching that point in the flight plan where they will be farthest out from the moon than any other manned or crewed space vehicle ever, about 257,000 miles from our planet. And then, of course, as Bill Harwood mentioned, they are going to be passing behind the moon and at its closest point to the moon at just a little after 8 o'clock this evening. The spacecraft is expected to be as close as 4,070 miles from the lunar surface. And during that time frame, we will be hoping that they'll get some great photographs, great video of areas of the moon that they really have not been able to see, even during the Apollo program. During the Apollo program, we launched all of those moon probes toward the moon right after new moon phase. In other words, the moon was not completely bright. It was just a thin crescent. This time around, we launched right on the day of full moon. And what that means is that the landscape is going to be illuminated on the far side differently than what it was like during the Apollo program. So now they're going to be able to see mountains, valleys, craters in full bright sunlight. And they're going to be able to take, as Bill Horowitz mentioned, a lot of pictures, a lot of photographs of regions of the moon that we really have not had a good view of because, again, it's over on the far side. How do they feel about this? I will say this. Michael Collins, and I knew Michael Collins, and I asked him the same question that many people have asked. How did you feel when you were all by yourself circling the moon while Armstrong and Aldrin were cavorting on the lunar surface? How did you feel? You were all by yourself. And he said it was indeed kind of a lonely feeling to be out of contact with the Earth when he was circling around the far side. Meanwhile, at least this go around, we're going to have four, not one, but four people to get together and share thoughts as they're out of contact with the Earth for those 40 minutes or so later this afternoon and this evening.
You know, Joe, we were talking about, in a funny way, some of the bathroom issues that the crew has had. But then, you know, I'm also thinking about that 40-minute window where they don't have any communication with Houston. So, you know, when you think about things like that, what are the most risky or challenging parts of this mission? And how are these astronauts sort of trained to deal with them?
Well, you know, as was noted, they've been training for this now for 3 years. So this is almost like by this time, I would suppose, they don't even think about what they're doing. They just go ahead and do it. I think they have a lot of things that they are doing during this mission. It's not just flying up to the moon and around and back. They have all sorts of experiments that they're conducting, changes in the immune system, the health of the astronauts, radiation and microgravity. They're going to be launching 4 CUBE satellites. These are satellites about the size of shoeboxes, but those tiny satellites will be investigating such things as space weather and technology for future space missions. So in a way, it sounds like it's tough and they're constantly working, but believe me, they've been training for this for 3 years, and I think they're having a lot of fun up there. They're having a field day, if you will, with this particular mission, flying out to the moon and coming back.
Joe, before I know you've got something that you want to show us, but I do have a quick question about some of the images that have been beamed back to Earth, including one of planet Earth, which we saw recently. And what I couldn't help thinking is I went back and I looked at some of the earlier images that have been sent back by some of the Apollo missions, where the Earth just looked. And the reason I'm asking you this because you're an astronomer, it looked bluer, it looked cleaner, it looked a little raggedy this time around. Maybe it was a different angle, maybe it was from a different position in the sky. But what did you make of that?
I will put it in the form of the question for one of the 4 astronauts, Christina Kosh. She has been in space now 324 days. Of course, she spent most of that time on the International Space Station in low Earth orbit, about 250 miles above the Earth. That, I'm sure, is an incredible sight, a stunning sight. But now, even for somebody who has been in space that long, I know that when they started pulling away from the Earth and she was actually able to see the Earth, the full Earth, that just absolutely blew her away. I can't even imagine what it would be like to see the Earth, our home planet, from that distance. And now, of course, they're coming closer to the moon. At its closest this evening, a little over 4,000 miles away, the moon to them is going to appear about the size of a basketball, held at arm's length. So, and as one who has looked at the moon through most of my life through telescopes, again, that must be an amazing experience. It's just an absolutely mind-boggling thing for anyone to experience. And I kind of wish that the two of you, Vladimir and Sabrina, and myself and everybody else, I kind of wish that we had that chance, that experience that they are experiencing right now of being able to see the Earth and the Moon from a completely different perspective.
Listen, I will go. Send the ticket. Joe, you have a very storied office. I'm told that you have something you want to show us.
Well, when I was a teenager back in, well, a long time ago, New York City had a citywide sign. Well, you could tell here that there's a lot of snow on the roof. I didn't have that when I was in this event. It was a science fair citywide in New York, and I was very fortunate to be a part of that science fair by the American Institute and the New York Daily News. And being a borough finalist, they gave all the finalists something very, very special. And this is what I'm talking about. This is a letter from the fourth man to walk on the moon, Alan Bean. And you see this little film strip here. One of the cameras that they used to photograph on the lunar surface, I guess, had a certain amount of dark leader. So they cut that dark leader into strips, put it in the frame along with, I put it in the frame here with astronaut Bean's signature. And this little film strip here actually landed on the moon with Alan Bean back in November of 1969. It's probably one of my most cherished and most important artifacts that I have. And back then, you know, in 1969, we all figured that, oh, we'll be going to the moon a lot in the coming years and decades. And it's hard to believe that it has been over 50 years since this launch that we have had the opportunity to actually go back to the moon, the vicinity of the moon, but we're doing it right now. And it kind of makes me think back to all of those years ago during the Apollo program, watching the astronauts. And we're still going to be doing that in 2028. Hopefully, we're going to be landing again on the moon. And unlike with the Apollo missions where we just flew, landed, we said, oh, we beat the Russians, and that was that. This time, we're going and we're going to stay. We're using the Artemis II mission as the foundation for hopefully, eventually, putting moon bases and colonies on the moon in the years and decades to come.
Yeah, certainly a full circle moment for you. Thanks so much, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you so much for having me.